Okay, so in this lesson we're going to talk about creating functions. So far we've been using them a little bit, but we're going to actually look at how to create our own custom functions to make the process of writing code, especially once we start creating GUIs inside of Maya, making that process a little bit easier. So let's start off with just looking at defining a function. To define a function, we start off with the command def, and then we give the function a name. So function name, open close parentheses with a colon. Go on to the next line, and then we tell the function what we are going to do. So let's say we have a print function, and we tell it this is a function. Okay, so that is how we define a function, and if we run this, you'll see that it loads it, but it doesn't really do anything. So this, you can kind of consider it like a blueprint of a set of code that you want to do. So how do we actually execute this command? Well, we need to call the function that we created. So in order to call the function, we do the name that we decided for it. So func name. And then now when we run it, we can see that it loads the code. Then when the function is called, it executes what's inside. So with a single print function, this isn't super helpful, but it becomes more helpful when you're doing multiple things and once we can customize what this function actually does each time. So let's say for simple customization, we can concatenate all this and say this is a, and then we can add a variable name. So let's say, let's call it input. There we go. We'll call it input. And over here, we'll set it as an argument, so that way we can customize this. So if we say input, and we try to run this now, you'll see that we get an error because we didn't input any value here. But let's say we took that and we said this is a sphere. So now we get the print statement, and it's printing out this is a sphere. Now we can take this and let's say we repeated this. So we have the function name, and then we say this is a cube. And then let's run this again, and we can see using the same function, we get a different result. Both of these, I should probably add a space. So in the function here, another benefit of this, rather than having to type all this out again, if this was a multi-line function, this is really easy as a single line, but if we add a space here, now all of the results that we have here, in this case it would have been like 2 times that we had to do this, but now we only fix it once, and it fixes it for every time we call that function. Great, so that is kind of the way that works. Also, instead of printing, let's say instead of printing we said return. So this is another way you can actually get the values of this to run. So right now we can see that it calls it, but it doesn't do anything because it's returning it as a value. So we need to use it as if it were a variable. So we can say we were running this as a print function. So print this function. And I'll do the same thing here. Actually, instead of doing that, what I'm going to do something slightly different with this one, but we'll run this right here so we can see that now it prints this is a sphere. Let's customize, or not customize this, but change this to underscores. So that way we are using it and we can use it in a different way. So if we do this, now we can see this is a sphere. And then we can do something like, let's call the Maya functions. Import maya.cmds as MC. So what we can do now is say mc.polycube, and then we'll say name, is equal to that function. So now when I run this, we can see it creates a cube, and the cube is named what is in that function because we're doing it as a return value here. Okay, so now what else can we do with this that will give us more functionality? So this is a good start to kind of give us an idea of what we can do with this. But let's say we had to get inputs. Well, this input right now, we're doing it here. But if we had it with a GUI, we can actually write whatever we wanted there. But let's say we wanted to set up a function that will duplicate a number of objects based off of a number of that we input here. So we're going to say dupe object, and in this case we're going to do a polysphere. So mc.polysphere. Actually, let's not even do it a polysphere. We'll do it based off of a selection. So I'm going to change this a little bit, and it will go mc.ls. And then we are going to do SL equals true. So we're getting a list of the selections. So let's print this. And while I'm testing this, I'm going to bring this down to the level, but then I'll indent it in a moment so that we can see how this works. So in order to run this line of code, we need to set it as a variable. So cell equals mc.ls equals true. And then we're going to say print cell, just to make sure that we have the right object. Great. And what I'm going to do is say cell is equal to the first index spot of cell. So that way we are just printing the object's name. And then we're going to say, so let's do while, and we'll create a variable here. Num is equal to 0. And then we're going to say while num is less than input. Then we'll do the loop. And then let's put all this in the loop so that we have access to the input command now. And what do we want to do with this loop? We want to do mc.duplicate. Then we're going to say that we want to duplicate the selection. And then let's say num plus equals 1. Okay, so now that this is in the function, we can call the function dupe object, and then let's say give it an input of 5. So we're going to duplicate it 5 times. So we have the original object 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Great. And then we have 5 copies of that, and if we wanted to, we can do offset the object. So mc.setAttr, and we'll say that it will be equal, or it will be cell plus tx, or .tx, and we're going to make that value equal to num times 5. So that way it spaces it out 5 spaces evenly. So if we have this original object and we run this, we get an error. It says invalid syntax, and that is here because we forgot to put a parentheses at the end. So let's try running that again. We got 5 new spheres that were duplicated from that original object, and it is based off of that. So if we had another object in the scene, oops, not a cube, let's say we had a sphere. We move that down and we run this again, we get that. And let's try creating a torus. And then let's say we ran this with a 3 here instead. We can get 3 copies of it. So we are able to use this same line of code to do multiple types of things with different objects in the scene. Let's say we added another argument up here, so we can do a comma and then add another argument. So we can say something like, let's put this back at 0. Okay, now that it is at 0, let's say we took this object here and we added spacing. So instead of it being num times 5, which is kind of predetermined, we have a set distance of 5 units every time, we can do spacing. So over here with arguments, we only have 1 right now, but maybe with the spacing we have 2. So let's try running all of this. And we can see we get 3 additional copies, but with only 2 unit spacing between each. So pretty quickly we can get quite powerful things happening with functions, with getting a variety of different results. And also, like I said, this is very useful once we're starting to use GUIs inside of Maya, because then the user can very easily change these values once we get into the process of actually creating GUIs to be able to use them as input values for our functions. I hope you found this useful. We'll see you guys in the next lesson. Bye.